Today I'm diving into another project, creating a Frankenstein Amiga from various parts I have lying around. Most of these parts come from a job lot of leftover spares I found on eBay. You might be wondering why I'm doing this. Well, I'm sort of challenging myself, and I offered to build an Amiga for a charity auction organised by a friendly man named Lee from the YouTube channel More Fun Making It.
Hi, I'm Lee from the YouTube channel More Fun Making It, and this year I'm raising money for the Befriending Scheme. The Befriending Scheme is an organisation that provides friendship and learning opportunities for vulnerable adults across Suffolk here in the UK. My own son Thomas enjoys working at the Red Rose Community Farm, run by the scheme, where he's able to build and maintain friendships as well as learn useful skills and engage in meaningful activities. He especially loves to care for the many animals on the farm, but I suspect his favourite thing is hanging out with his friends. The money we aim to raise this year will be used to fund acquiring some miniature donkeys to live on the farm. That's right, donkeys come in mini-sized too. On the 19th of October, I'll be hosting a 12-hour live stream with lots of retro and vintage tech YouTubers from all over the world. And during the day, all of the auctions I and others have been preparing will be ending, hopefully raising a huge heap of money to buy those donkeys. The theme of this year's event is Commodore, and we'll have lots of different Commodore machines ranging all the way from the Kim 1 right up to an amazing Amiga 1200 in a big box Checkmate case. As well as all the stuff I'll be selling, lots of my YouTube chums will be auctioning off their own items, with all of the proceeds going to the cause. And I suspect the video you're watching right now is all about one of those items. So if you'd like to bid on something or just come along and watch the stream, you can find links to everything you need in the description. If you can't make it but would like to donate, there's a Just Giving page which you can find in the same place. Thank you, and on with the video! I accept.
There's something a little strange going on with this Amiga 500 revision 5. It seems that not all the RAM chips are managing to output TTL logic levels based on what I'm seeing on the scope. Diagram is giving me random green and blue flashes, so I'm going to pull all the RAM out and socket it. Having the RAM in sockets will be a much better solution for the new owner, especially if any of the RAM I'm installing goes bad in the future. My master plan here is to mark the rows of pins I need to desolder, so I don't end up desoldering anything unnecessary. In a moment you'll witness this masterstroke of genius thwarted by my consistent stupidity and aging eyesight. So here we go. As I told you right from the start, the first thing I desolder, ignoring my marks, is the resistor pack. Well, let's just start that out and pretend that no one noticed. Now all the RAM has been removed, we just need to unblock the pads and clean up the flux. Before we can solder in any of the new sockets, for the RAM, we need to tack back in those resistor packs, the ones I unsoldered for no reason earlier. Not that I'm planning to put any of the original RAM back in, but let's go ahead and test it to see if it shows up as bad. Well, would you Adam and Eve it? All of the RAM tests good. I suppose the heat from the desoldering of the chips might have revived it, or maybe the logic levels I saw are enough for the tester but not for the Amiga. Or perhaps the RAM isn't the issue and we've got something else causing the Amiga not to function. Sponsors of this video are PCBWay. They provide PCB prototype fabrication from as little as $5. They also have a huge library of shared projects, and if you're not confident with a soldering iron, you can get them to assemble them for you. PCBWay also have CNC machining and 3D printing services. All of this is available at PCBWay.com. Thanks PCBWay for sponsoring this video. Time to start putting the sockets in. 16 times 16 pin dip sockets, that's 256 solder points, plus the resistor packs that I unsoldered for no reason. We best get cracking. Because I have a couple of cuts on my hands that I don't particularly want to get flux and IPA in, I'd best adorn myself with some Smurf skin gloves. I'm going to tack in one socket and solder it up to make sure I'm happy with the temperatures before I go broke and install all the rest. You might need to go a touch hotter to solder the voltage planes. I've tacked in the rest using the two voltage pins, 5 volts and ground. Now I just need to solder in the rest of the pins and clean up the flux. That's all the sockets installed. Now they just need chips. I was going to do this off camera, but then I remembered someone saying they hated turn pin sockets because they're hard to line up with the chip pins. So I thought I'd showcase how I do it. I just love getting trolled about my technique. This is just how I do it. It's not advice. I'm not a chip insertation instructor. If you don't like it, don't do it. I'm just saying it works for me. All the RAM is installed and looking lovely. I took the liberty of fixing the ROM socket so it will take a 27C400 EPROM or a later mask ROM. This is another future-proofing step for the next owner should they want to upgrade to a later Kickstart version. Diagram installed, let's see what it says. We have life. Oh, and I've cleaned up the flux and covered the bodge wires from the ROM socket modification. We have a working board, but we need more than that to build a full Amiga. In the same job lot of parts, I have several bits of keyboards. This is where it gets even more Frankenstein. The keys aren't laid out in the same way as my other 500s. I think this is from an earlier keyboard. The controller is from a Rev 6, green power light. I must remember to keep this away from floppies. If you can properly identify the original revision any of these parts came from, then please comment below. Just a billion screws now. Let's hook it all back up with the keyboard and make sure it's happy before we swap out Diagram for Kickstart and try booting the Amiga into test kit. The next step is to get it to boot into Workbench and see if we can load Star Tracker from the external GOTEK drive. Loading a module and playing it will give I/O, graphics and RAM a fairly good workout. All good so far, but since we've opened Pandora's box, why not see if we can get that 512K of RAM in the trapdoor to be chip RAM? Having a total of 1 meg chip RAM opens more games and options for the next owner. We just need an 8372A Agnus and a little modification. JP2 needs to be swapped, we need to cut a trace from Gary to the trapdoor, and we need to cover pin 41 on Agnus to keep it in PAL and prevent it from switching to NTSC. While you weren't looking, I've sprinkled a little cosmetic customization over this A500. All we need now is a case.
This journey begins with a slightly neglected and yellowed A500 case. Well, at least two halves of two different A500 cases which have been equally neglected and yellowed over time. In fact, this one at the bottom has a little bit more damage than I'd like, so let's swap that out for another one. There's probably at least 3 Amiga cases that have gone into making this complete one. But when I'm finished, this is going to be more Cinderella than it is Ugly Sister. But it is going to be a little bit of a Marmite colour. You're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. And please let me know which camp you're in by commenting below. So we have a case. Well, the first thing we need to do is remove all the badges from it and give it a clean of its life. This thing has to be absolutely pristine for me to change the colour. So sit back and watch the chiptune fueled cleaning montage. The first phase of the colour transformation process, i.e. me spraying a case a different colour, is a black undercoat. This is basically a plastic primer and the base coat for the really weird colour I'm going to paint it afterwards. Now, I admit it does look quite good in black, but hey, black Amigas these days are 10 a penny. We're going a little bit more crazy than just black. In fact, we're going another 2, maybe 3 coats of crazy and some more lacquer on top of that, because I want this to be something that is relatively robust and will stand up to not abuse, but at least some use. Having finished the paint over the course of about 2 weeks, and it being barely dry, I decided to take it with me to RMC the cave, as Lee was going to be there, and it was kind of useful to get his opinion.
There we go, the turn off to Stroud, home of the cave in RMC.
I didn't really get any footage of this, but here's a picture of me in the RMC retro shop. So with the paint now well and truly dry, I can put the finishing touches to case and put the Amiga 500 board in its new home. The next stop is Kickstart, where Reese proves that he can play any Doom game on any platform, even if it's not an Atari. I spent much of the day just generally chatting to people and hanging around with the other YouTubers in the community room. Yeah, that Rob Smith, the evil genius that brought you this. And at the end of Saturday, we had a small signing ceremony. Well, you'd be forgiven for thinking that's the end of the journey. But when I got back, a couple of weeks later, I'd needed some footage for the end of this video. So I tried to fire up the Amiga, only to find it was dead. So I immediately began to execute the Commodore Advanced Troubleshooting Action Plan, pushed some chips and then tried it again. And nothing. This one was going to take the big guns. So I proceeded to eliminate the CPU and Gary. These are the usual causes of a black screen on an Amiga 500. I then went to town, beeping out the entirety of the CPU socket. In doing so, I found one pin that was not connected correctly. So I turned the board over to have a look at the trace, tried the continuity on that again, and I got a beep. It works fine. Confused, I turned the board back over again, and I don't have continuity. Now thinking I'm just too tired to continue, I went to bed and intended to pick this up in the morning.
Day 2.
Unfortunately, daylight did not bring any change to the situation. After looking at the underside of the board and that particular trace with magnification, I could see that it was slightly damaged, and in fact the flex of the board when turning it upside down was enough to make contact. So all I've done is put a piece of wire across that, and it's now as solid as ever. It fires up like nothing ever happened. So now we can get this buttoned up. While we've got the board out, I'm going to make it as tidy as possible and add any finishing touches that I think might be a good idea. Let's get it buttoned up and back in the box and finish this video. And this time I'm going to test it before I put the lid on and again afterwards.
So if you cast your mind back a little bit, you might remember a video I did on converting an old Amiga external floppy drive into something that was a GOTEK with a retro flair. If you haven't seen that video, then I'll link it in the description below. This is kind of a follow-on from that. So I'm going to take this incredibly grubby and disgusting and stained Camara drive and make that into something cool. The one thing I really wanted to do is have an OLED that was purple, and we're going to give that a go today. See if we can create a purple OLED screen on a GOTEK to go with that Amiga purple out there case. And hopefully you'll like it. If you like the case, I think you'll like this. If you don't like the case, maybe you'll like this. Who knows? Please remember that during this that I am in fact an idiot, and please do not copy what I do. I will need, of course, to clean everything. And I need to clean the cable. That's not that interesting, me just rubbing a bit of cable. Now you'll notice a very small transformation in this case, and it's gone from horrible stained beige yellow nastiness to quite cool black kind of glittery look. Also remember, I built this black GOTEK in the original video, again linked in the description. it has a blue OLED display on it. So I have scoured the internet to try and find a purple OLED display. They're blue, orange, green, white, no problem. Purple, nobody does one. What I did think is, harking back to my days in theatre and doing lighting, that we could use a filter potentially on the front to make it look purple. So really it's just a matter of cutting film to the right size and simply sticking it with a little bit of double-sided sticky tape.
Guess what? We found it!
So I've got a white OLED display, I'm going to swap that out. Because the GOTEK actually doesn't sit flush with the outside, I'm going to actually make the inside of it pink to give it a little bit of a neon accent, and ties it in nicely with the purple Amiga. Hopefully you'll agree with me that this looks quite nice. The purple actually works better than I expected. One of the things I have done is turn up the OLED contrast to its maximum. You can do that in the FFCFG file by putting that in a USB, same way as you configure all the other screen parameters on Floppy. If you want more information on that, I will link the GitHub to Floppy and the config information, and I'll also just put a little note into what you should be looking for. Well, it won't hurt if you like the video. Subscribing to the channel is completely free and it does help me out. And if you've liked this, then why not try this out next?
Perfect. But this bit is not purple or gold. Phone. Andy, I need to get this tank mouse PCB in purple